Imagine looking up to find a gargantuan gas giant suddenly occupying the space where our moon used to reside. The sight would be both the most beautiful and the most horrific thing humanity has ever witnessed. In that single moment of replacement, Earth would instantly cease to be classified as a planet. We would become a moon ourselves, trapped in the unforgiving gravitational grip of this invading giant. Scientists would struggle to reclassify our home even as the countdown to our extinction began. Survival would be a matter of minutes, as the planetary switch disrupts the very fabric of our world. To understand the scale of this disaster, we must first look at the sheer size of Saturn compared to our moon. Our moon has a radius of just over 1,000 miles, which is less than a third of Earth's width. It orbits us at a comfortable distance of 384,000 kilometers. You could fit about 30 more Earth-sized planets in the gap between us and our moon. But Saturn is 33 times wider than the moon, meaning it would dominate our entire horizon. Its rings would reach out across the sky, stretching nearly halfway to where the moon once sat. Interestingly, because we would be sitting near its equator, the rings would look like a razor-thin band. Despite being made of light gases like hydrogen and helium, Saturn is anything but light or fluffy. It is the second most massive planet in our solar system, outweighing Earth by 95 times. This makes Saturn over 7,000 times more massive than the moon it just replaced. Mass on this scale brings with it an absolutely enormous and unforgiving gravitational pull. The moment Saturn appears, it would begin pulling our entire planet toward itself with terrifying speed. Much like the moon causes our tides, Saturn would pull at our oceans, but on a scale beyond imagination. These tidal forces would be thousands of times stronger than anything we have ever experienced. The oceans would rush back as waves hundreds of meters high, obliterating anything in their path. Massive ships would be lifted like toys and smashed into the ruins of coastal cities. The gravity would not just be pulling on the water, it would be tugging at the very land beneath your feet. Earth's crust is delicate, and every major fault line would be stressed past its ultimate breaking point. You would be running from earthquakes that spread across the globe like a plague. Volcanoes would erupt simultaneously, spewing toxic ash and gas into the choking atmosphere. Cities would be shaken until they were nothing but rubble, and no help would be coming to save you. This initial chaos is only the first few minutes of Earth's new life as an unstable moon. Even if you survive the quakes and the floods, the real nightmare is just beginning. Our planet's trajectory would shift permanently, falling into a slow and deadly death spiral towards Saturn. We wouldn't be a stable moon like Titan. We would be an interloper destined for a collision. And as we drift deeper into Saturn's territory, we are about to meet one of its permanent residents. That gray rock growing in the sky is the moon Dione, and it is on a direct collision course with us. Dione is Saturn's fourth largest moon, and it orbits at nearly the same distance as our old moon. While it is only a third of the size of our moon, it is still a massive rock that would dwarf the dinosaur killer. At first, it would just look like a new star, growing brighter and larger every hour. Soon, it would enter our atmosphere and ignite into a fireball that sets the entire sky ablaze. The impact would punch through the crust and create a country-sized crater of boiling lava. Earth would become a sterilized, uninhabitable ball of fire where no life could possibly survive. This is the fate that awaits us when the King of Planets takes our moon's place. To understand the nightmare ahead, we must first look at the sheer scale of the Titan that has claimed us. Our familiar moon is a modest satellite possessing a radius of just 1,740 kilometers. That size is less than 1/3 the width of the Earth, making it a comfortable neighbor in the night sky. It orbits at a distance of 384,000 kilometers away from our surface. To visualize that gap, imagine fitting 30 entire Earths side by side between us and our lunar companion. But now that familiar silver orb is gone, replaced by a gas giant 33 times wider than the moon. Saturn is so enormous that it would not just occupy a spot in the sky, it would dominate the entire horizon. Its rings add to this terrifying spectacle, stretching 282,000 kilometers from the planet's center. These rings would reach out toward Earth, their outer edges resting halfway between us and the moon's former home. From our position at Saturn's equator, we wouldn't see the majestic circles we recognize from textbooks. Instead, they would appear as a razor-thin band cutting across the sky, for they are only about 10 meters thick. Do not let its composition fool you. Being a gas giant made of hydrogen and helium does not mean it is light. Saturn is the second most massive planet in our solar system, a heavyweight champion of the cosmos. It is 95 times more massive than Earth, a figure that is hard for the human mind to grasp. When you compare it to our departed moon, Saturn is over 7,700 times more massive. Mass on this scale brings with it an irresistible and terrifying gravitational pull. The moment Saturn appears, it begins to reel our planet in with a grip that can never be broken. Just as the moon once pulled gently at our oceans to create the tides, Saturn does the same, but with localized fury. This pull is thousands of times stronger than anything life on Earth has ever experienced. The oceans begin to form enormous bulges, preparing to unleash a global deluge. Tides run out to sea like raging rivers, only to return as waves that dwarf the tallest skyscrapers. Ships are left stranded on the muddy ocean floor before being pulverized by the returning wall of water. Coastal cities are not just flooded, they are decimated by the sheer mechanical force of the water. And this gravity does not just tug on the liquid water, it pulls at the very bedrock beneath our feet. The Earth's surface, which seemed so sturdy, is revealed to be delicate under such planetary stress. Every fault line on the planet is pushed past its breaking point simultaneously. People find themselves running from earthquakes that spread across entire continents like a plague. Dormant volcanoes awaken, spewing toxic ash and gas into an already choked atmosphere. Mega tsunamis and megaquakes combine to turn our greatest architectural achievements into mere rubble. Emergency services are obliterated. There is no one left to answer the calls for help. If you are trapped in the ruins, you are truly alone as the world ends around you. Even through the chaos, the view above is hauntingly beautiful, a golden giant claiming the heavens. Our planet has officially been demoted from a world to a mere satellite of this gas king. The shift in classification is not just academic, it is a death sentence for our orbit. We are now part of a system with over 274 other moons, each a potential hazard. The scale of Saturn's dominance is absolute, and our fragile world is buckling under its weight. Every second that passes, the gravitational stress increases as we drift closer to the giant. But the gravity and the tides are only the beginning of our descent into cosmic oblivion. There are other sentinels in this new home, ancient moons that have circled Saturn for eons. And one of them, a frozen rock named Dione, is already screaming toward us on an unavoidable collision course. While the moon Dione looms in the distance, a much more immediate threat begins to rise from our own horizon. Saturn's gravity is over 7,000 times more powerful than the moon's, and the water feels every bit of it. At every coastline on the planet, the water starts to behave in ways that defy all historical records. The tide doesn't just go out, it vanishes, retreating kilometers away into the dark abyss of the new tidal bulge. For a few haunting minutes, the world is silent as the atmosphere struggles to adjust to the shifting mass. Then a low rumble begins to shake the very foundations of the continental shelves. On the horizon, a thin white line appears, growing taller with every passing second. This is not a normal tsunami. It is a mountain of water, hundreds of meters high. In New York, the Statue of Liberty is swallowed in an instant, her torch disappearing beneath the churning foam. The water hits the skyscrapers with the force of 1,000 freight trains, shattering glass and buckling steel. Entire city blocks are erased from the map in less time than it takes to breathe. The return flow is even more destructive, dragging the remains of civilization into the deep ocean trenches. This process repeats every time Earth rotates, as the tidal bulge stays fixed towards Saturn while we spin through it. There is no high ground high enough to escape the reach of a planet-sized gravitational tug. London, Tokyo, and Rio de Janeiro are now nothing more than underwater graveyards. But the water is only the first layer of Earth's surface to react to this cosmic invader. Beneath the waves, the tectonic plates are beginning to groan under the same impossible pressure. The Earth's crust is not a solid shell, it is a puzzle of fragile pieces that Saturn is now trying to rearrange. As the water levels stabilize into their new permanent bulges, the land itself starts to rise and fall. A magnitude 12 earthquake, something previously thought impossible, tears through the San Andreas Fault. The energy released is equivalent to millions of nuclear bombs detonating at once. Cities that survived the tsunamis are now shaken into dust by the unrelenting tremors. This is known as tidal heating, where the friction of the moving crust generates massive amounts of internal energy. Dormant volcanoes across the globe begin to wake up, triggered by the sudden shift in magma pressure. The sky, once blue and serene, is quickly filled with a thick, suffocating layer of volcanic ash. Saturn is no longer a beautiful sight in the sky, it is a predatory giant feeding on our world. In the Atlantic, a new island chain is formed in minutes as the mid-ocean ridge is ripped apart. The steam from these eruptions creates massive hypercanes, storms fueled by the extreme heat of the exposed mantle. Communication systems fail as the ionosphere is bombarded by the shifting magnetic fields of both planets. Those few humans who reached higher ground now find the air itself becoming toxic with sulfur and ash. The global temperature begins to rise as the greenhouse effect from the volcanic gases takes hold. The very air starts to burn as lightning strikes ignite the methane escaping from the ocean floor. Massive sinkholes open up in the middle of continents, swallowing entire towns as the ground liquefies. The Earth is being kneaded like dough by Saturn's gravitational hands. Rivers reverse their flow, surging inland and flooding the hearts of every continent. The magnetic field of Earth begins to fluctuate wildly, stripping away our protection from solar radiation. The sky turns a bruised purple as the atmosphere is ionized by the dual presence of two massive magnetic poles. Every second, the Earth loses more of its identity, becoming a broken satellite to a gas giant. This is the end of the world as we knew it, and the geology has only just begun to fail. But as we struggle with the sinking land and the rising seas, an even larger shadow begins to fall across the sky. It is the moon Tethys, and its gravity is about to do to our atmosphere what Saturn did to our oceans. The sky-filling presence of Saturn begins to exert a force on our world that the ground beneath our feet was never meant to endure. While the oceans are already being torn apart by mega tsunamis, the solid rock of the tectonic plates starts to buckle under the gravitational strain. Deep within the Earth, the core shifts, reacting to the 7,700-fold increase in tidal mass pulling from above. The first major tremors hit the San Andreas Fault not as a standard quake, but as a total structural failure of the continental shelf. In California, the ground ripples like liquid, turning once stable foundations into sinking traps of concrete and steel. Every major fault line across the globe is simultaneously stressed past its breaking point as Saturn's gravity tugs at the land. Massive fissures open in the middle of the Great Plains, swallowing entire farms and towns into the dark belly of the planet. But the quakes are only the beginning of the geological collapse, as the pressure builds beneath the world's most dangerous peaks. Mount Etna and Vesuvius roar to life at once, triggered by the sudden shifting of the Mediterranean plate. Thick clouds of toxic ash and sulfurous gas begin to spew into the atmosphere, choking the sky and blocking out the sun. This is not just a localized disaster, but the start of a planetary sterilization process driven by celestial mechanics. Beneath the Pacific Ocean, the Ring of Fire ignites as hundreds of undersea volcanoes erupt simultaneously. The steam from these eruptions creates massive hypercanes, adding atmospheric chaos to the geological ruin. On the surface, the few remaining emergency services are rendered useless as roads melt and bridges vanish into chasms. Communications go dark as the shifting crust severs undersea cables and topples satellite uplink towers. In the Yellowstone caldera, the ground rises by several meters in a matter of minutes, signaling the awakening of the supervolcano. When Yellowstone finally blows, the explosion is heard across 3 continents, sending a plume of debris into the stratosphere. Ash from the supereruption begins to rain down like gray snow, burying cities under feet of heavy, glass-like dust. The weight of the ash causes roofs to cave in, trapping survivors in their own homes as the quakes continue. In Iceland, the entire island seems to split apart as the mid-ocean ridge is pulled wide by Saturn's grip. The Himalayas are rocked by landslides so massive they reshape the mountains, erasing entire valleys and the villages within them. The tidal forces are so strong that the very shape of the Earth begins to elongate, bulging toward the gas giant. This elongation causes the crust to tear in ways never seen in human history, creating massive megafaults that span thousands of miles. In the Amazon, the river reverses its flow as the land itself tilts, flooding the basin with a mixture of silt and volcanic sludge. The air itself becomes a cocktail of carbon dioxide and sulfur, making it impossible to breathe for anyone left on the surface. Underground bunkers designed for nuclear war begin to fail as the shifting Earth crushes their reinforced concrete shells. For those inside, the quakes are a deafening, never-ending roar that echoes through the very bedrock. There is no safe place on Earth, as the gravity of our new host planet demands a total reorganization of our world's structure. The Earth's rotation begins to slow as it enters a tidal lock with Saturn, causing one side to be roasted and the other to freeze. Massive electrical storms, fueled by volcanic particles and atmospheric friction, dance across the darkened sky. The sound of the planet itself breaking is a low-frequency groan that can be felt in the bones of any living creature left. In Japan, the islands begin to submerge as the tectonic plates are forced downward into the mantle. The once mighty skyscrapers of Tokyo are now just tombstones for a civilization that never saw this coming. New volcanic islands burst forth from the sea in the middle of the Atlantic, born from the raw fury of the planet's interior. The Earth's magnetic field begins to flicker and weaken as the core's rotation is disrupted by the external pull. Without our magnetic shield, solar radiation begins to bake the surface, adding a silent, invisible killer to the chaos. The ozone layer is stripped away, leaving the surface exposed to the full, unfiltered power of the sun's ultraviolet rays. As the geological collapse reaches its peak, the Earth is no longer a world, but a bruised and broken moon of Saturn. But even as the quakes subside into a dull roar, a new threat appears on the horizon, one that Saturn's gravity has pulled from the darkness. It is the moon Dione, and it is no longer just another point of light. It is a billion-ton battering ram on a direct collision course with our planet. The massive silhouette of Dione looms larger in the sky than the sun ever did. Earth is no longer following a stable path as Saturn's gravity drags us into a tightening spiral. Orbital decay has become a physical reality as the atmosphere begins to thin and stretch. Every hour brings us closer to the icy moon that was once just a speck in a telescope. Gravity is now a weapon, pulling these two massive bodies together with mathematical precision. On the surface, the sky has turned into a ceiling of ancient frozen stone. The air screams as the leading edges of our atmospheres begin to touch. Dione is a world of ice, and it is about to meet a world of fire. Satellites are the first to go, crushed between the competing gravitational wells. There is no propulsion system on Earth that can alter our course now. The tides are no longer just water. The very crust of the Earth is bulging toward Dione. We have entered the danger zone where the two orbits intersect. For a moment, the world is silent as we drift into the shadow of the giant moon. Then, the first vibrations begin, a low hum that vibrates in the marrow of bones. Gravity is literally tearing the topsoil off the planet. Dione's surface is close enough to see individual ridges and valleys. The speed of our approach has reached several kilometers per second. This is the end of the world as a home and the beginning of it as a target. The sky glows a dull, friction-burnt orange as the atmospheres compress. Astronomers once marveled at Dione's beauty. Now it is our executioner. A massive electrical discharge leaps across the vacuum between the worlds. The oceans are being pulled into a singular, mountain-sized bulge facing the moon. This gravitational interaction is slowing Earth's rotation to a crawl. The countdown to impact is no longer measured in days, but in minutes. We are descending into the depths of Saturn's gravity. Well, the Earth's crust begins to shatter like glass under the strain. Dione's gravity is so strong that people on the ground feel lighter. The final approach is a silent, terrifying glide through the abyss. The Roche limit for Dione is irrelevant. This is a direct kinetic collision. There is no atmosphere left to breathe, only the heat of compression. The horizon of Dione now encompasses the entire field of vision. Mountains on Dione are higher than our clouds, and they are coming down. The magnetic fields of both worlds are clashing, creating a global aurora of fire. The impact velocity is estimated at over 20,000 miles per hour. Humanity's final seconds are spent in the shadow of a moon that doesn't care. The first touch will not be a sound, but a blinding flash of energy. The kinetic energy involved is enough to vaporize entire oceans instantly. Dione is the hammer, and Earth is the anvil of Saturn. We are no longer a planet. We are a casualty of celestial mechanics. As the ice of Dione finally bites into the rock of Earth, the very core of our world begins to scream. The collision with Dione delivers a kinetic energy blast equivalent to billions of nuclear warheads detonating at once. A country-sized crater punches through the lithosphere, exposing the churning white-hot mantle beneath the crust. Shockwaves ripple across the planet's surface at thousands of kilometers per hour, shattering tectonic plates like glass. Entire mountain ranges are leveled in seconds as the ground beneath them liquefies under the immense pressure. Atmospheric oxygen ignites into a global firestorm, turning the sky into a furnace of burning gas. A massive blob of molten core material is ejected into space, glowing with the heat of a small star. This ejecta will eventually cool into a new desolate moon, orbiting a dead world. On the surface, the oceans reach their boiling point, turning into towering pillars of superheated steam. Within minutes, every trace of human civilization is vaporized or buried under miles of molten slag. Earth has been effectively sterilized, its surface a uniform sea of red-hot magma. The familiar blue marble is gone, replaced by a hellish glowing orb of liquid stone. Only the most resilient bacteria at the deepest volcanic vents might briefly survive the initial thermal shock. Even these life forms find no refuge as the very crust they inhabit melts into the mantle. The atmosphere is now a thick, toxic soup of silicate vapors and volcanic gases. Saturn watches over its new broken moon with an indifferent, massive gaze. Earth's orbit continues to tighten, drawn by the invisible threads of Saturn's immense gravity. The path ahead leads directly toward the majestic yet razor-sharp rings of the giant. Billions of ice boulders and dust particles await the arrival of the molten intruder. The heat from Earth begins to vaporize the nearest ring particles before it even enters the field. For any observer on the ISS, the view of the rings would be the last thing they ever see. The first impacts are small, like sandblasting the hull of the space station into dust. Larger chunks of ice soon follow, punching through the metal modules like artillery shells. The station is quickly reduced to a cloud of metallic shrapnel, joining the ring's composition. Earth itself now plows into the rings, acting like a giant eraser moving through a chalk drawing. Trillions of ice crystals enter the atmosphere, creating the most brilliant meteor shower in history. There are no eyes left on the surface to witness the beauty of this terminal event. Each piece of ice that hits the magma surface is instantly hissed into vapor, adding to the thick clouds. Earth's gravity flings larger ring moonlets out of their stable orbits, creating orbital chaos. As Earth descends further, it passes the 120,000 kilometer mark, entering the heart of the giant's domain. The tidal forces here are no longer just moving water. They are deforming the very shape of the planet. The internal friction from this constant stretching keeps the mantle liquid and the surface glowing. Earth then slips into the shadow of Saturn, disappearing into a total darkness that lasts for hours. In the darkness, the only thing visible is the ghostly, dim infrared glow of the dying world. This period of darkness allows for a slight cooling of the surface crust, forming temporary dark plates of rock. But the reprieve is short-lived as the orbit carries Earth back into the punishing solar radiation. The distance to the gas giant continues to drop, now reaching the critical 75,000-kilometer range. Saturn's gravity is now 95 times stronger than what our planet's self-gravity can withstand. The Roche limit is only a few thousand kilometers away, and the planet is beginning to vibrate. Strange acoustic waves travel through the molten interior, sounding like a low rhythmic moan. As the first tendrils of Earth's crust are physically lifted toward Saturn, the planet begins to unspool like a ball of yarn. The molten remnants of Earth drift helplessly toward the inner edge of Saturn's colossal ring system. Space is no longer an empty void, but a dense thicket of high-speed projectiles. The first ice boulders strike the thinning atmosphere with the force of nuclear warheads. These are the frozen sentinels of Saturn, moving at thousands of miles per hour. Earth's gravity begins to pull these ring fragments out of their stable orbits. A localized storm of ice and rock descends upon the charred crust. Steam erupts in massive plumes as ice hits the cooling lava flows. The planet acts like a giant vacuum, clearing a path through the rings. However, the friction of this crossing is physically stripping Earth's outer layers. Any remaining satellites or orbital debris are instantly vaporized by the ring ice. The once blue planet is now a jagged, bleeding sphere of rock. Saturn's gravitational shear begins to tug at the planet's equator. A haunting silence pervades the vacuum as a mountain-sized fragment of ice approaches. The collision shatters the ice into a fine powder that blankets the Earth's sky. Below the clouds, the surface is a hellscape of crashing ice and rising magma. The kinetic energy of billions of impacts keeps the crust in a state of constant flux. Earth is now deeper within the gravity well than it has ever been. The rings are not just hitting the planet, they are grinding it down. The orbital velocity of the debris is vastly different from Earth's current path. This creates a cosmic sandblasting effect on a planetary scale. A skyscraper-sized block of frozen ammonia pierces through the remaining crust. Massive shock waves ripple through the mantle, destabilizing the core. The Moon's old orbit is a distant memory as the gas giant dominates every horizon. We are witnessing the physical deconstruction of a terrestrial world. The temperature fluctuates wildly as cold ice meets scorching heat. The rings begin to glow with the heat of a billion impacts. Gravity is no longer a force of cohesion, but one of dissection. Earth's rotation is slowing as tidal locking forces take hold. A cluster of ring rocks shreds the last of the ozone layer. The planet is being prepared for its final transformation. Fragments of Earth's iron core are beginning to leak out through the fissures. The sheer scale of the destruction is beyond human comprehension. We are now entering the densest part of the B-ring. Visibility drops to zero as the planet is enveloped in a shroud of dust. Static electricity from the friction creates lightning bolts miles long. The planet's magnetic field is failing, leaving it defenseless. Orbital decay has accelerated to the point of no return. The inner rings are acting like a serrated blade, cutting into the planet's mantle. Massive chunks of the Earth's mantle are ejected into space by the force of the crossing. The very core of the planet begins to vibrate under the immense tidal stress. We are moments away from the final crossing of the Roche limit. Suddenly, a deep, resonant crack echoes through the planetary body as the Earth begins to split in two. The deep, resonant crack within the Earth's core signals the beginning of the final dissolution. As the distance to Saturn closes to 71,000 kilometers, the gravitational tug-of-war becomes impossibly one-sided. We have officially reached the Roche limit, the invisible boundary, where a planet's internal gravity can no longer hold it together. Saturn's mass is 95 times that of Earth, making this a fatal encounter for our once stable home. The side of the Earth facing the gas giant experiences a pull far stronger than the far side, stretching the planet into an egg shape. Massive plumes of magma and rock are yanked from the crust and flung toward the giant's atmosphere. Tectonic plates that survived the previous impacts now shatter into billions of individual boulders. Within mere hours, the structural integrity of the entire planet completely fails. What was once the cradle of humanity is now a stream of glowing particles orbiting Saturn's equator. These rocky shards begin to spread out, colliding with one another and settling into a stable, thin band. Earth has been recycled by the cosmos, joining the ranks of the icy debris that defines the gas giant. This process is how scientists believe many of Saturn's original rings were first created. Millions of years from now, another civilization might look through a telescope and marvel at this specific ring. They will see a shimmering belt of stone and metal, never knowing it once held oceans, forests, and billions of lives. The story of Earth ends not with a whimper, but as a permanent golden monument in the silent reaches of space. Every mountain and every memory has been ground into the fine dust that now circles the king of the planets. The orbital dance is over, and the chaos of the last few days has settled into a cold, eternal rhythm. In the grand timeline of the universe, the life and death of Earth was but a brief, spectacular flicker. Silence returns to the solar system as the debris finds its final resting place. Earth's journey as a planet is over, but its existence continues as a part of something much greater. The gravity that destroyed us has also preserved us in this beautiful frozen orbit. We are reminded that the cosmos is a place of constant change and violent beauty. Our legacy is now written in the stars and the silicate rocks of the eighth ring. No one remains to mourn, yet the universe continues its patient, clockwork motion. The giant has claimed its prize, and the moon switch is complete. The turbulent skies of the gas giant absorb the last of Earth's atmospheric gases. The transformation is absolute and irreversible. Gravity has finally won the battle against geology. This is the quiet after the ultimate storm. The rings of Saturn have never looked more spectacular or more tragic. We are all, in the end, just stardust returning to the fold. Earth's chapter in the solar system has officially closed. The remnants of our world now glide in a peaceful, eternal circle. No more quakes, no more fires, just the cold vacuum of space. Saturn remains, the silent witness to the end of a world. We have become the light that glints off a distant moon. The cosmic scale has reached its equilibrium once again. The Roche limit was the final hurdle that Earth could not clear. In the end, we were just too close to greatness. And so Saturn continues its journey through the void, forever changed and forever carrying the dust of Earth.